Chapter 3 Sadako's Secret. It was the beginning of autumn when Sadako rushed home with the good news. She kicked off her shoes and threw open the door with a bang. "I'm home," she called. Her mother was fixing supper in the kitchen. "The most wonderful thing has happened," Sadako said breathlessly. "Guess what?" "Many wonderful things happened to you, Sadako-chan. I can't even guess." "The big race on field day," Sadako said. "I've been chosen from the bamboo class to be on the relay team." She danced around the room, happily swinging her school bag. "Just think, if we win, I'll be sure to get on the team in junior high school next year." That was what Sadako wanted more than anything else. At supper, Mr. Sasaki made a long speech about family honor and pride. Even Mashiro was impressed. Sadako was too excited to eat. She just sat there, grinning happily. From then on, Sadako thought of only one thing, the relay race. She practiced every day at school and often ran all the way home. When Mashiro timed her with Mr. Sasaki's big watch, Sadako's speed surprised everyone. "Maybe," she dreamed, "I will be the best runner in the whole school." At last, the big day arrived. A crowd of parents, relatives, and friends gathered at the school to watch the sports events. Sadako was so nervous. She was afraid her legs wouldn't work at all. Members of the other team suddenly looked taller and stronger than her teammates. When Sadako told her mother how she felt, Mrs. Sasaki said, "Sadako-chan, it is natural to be a little bit afraid. But don't worry. When you get out there, you will run as fast as you can." Then it was time for the relay race. "Just do your best," Mr. Sasaki said, giving Sadako's hand a squeeze. "We'll be proud of you." The kind words from her parents made the knot in Sadako's stomach loosen. They love me, no matter what, she thought. At the signal to start, Sadako forgot everything about the race. But when it was her turn, she ran with all the strength she had. Sadako's heart was still thumping painfully against her ribs when the race was over. It was then that she first felt strange and dizzy. She scarcely heard someone cry, "Your team won!" The bamboo class surrounded Sadako, cheering and shouting. She shook her head a few times, and the dizziness went away. All winter, Sadako tried to improve her running speed. To qualify for the racing team in junior high, she would have to practice every day. Sometimes, after a long run, the dizziness returned. Sadako decided not to tell her family about it. She tried to convince herself that it meant nothing, that the dizziness would go away. But it didn't. It got worse. Frightened, Sadako carried the secret inside of her. She didn't even tell Shizuku, her best friend. On New Year's Eve, Sadako hoped she could magically wish away the dizzy spells. How perfect everything would be if she didn't have the secret. At midnight, she was in her cozy bedquilts when the temple bells began to chime. They were ringing out all the evils of the old year so that the new one would have a fine beginning. With each ring, Sadako drowsily made her special wish. The next morning, the Sasaki family joined crowds of people as they visited their shrines. Mrs. Sasaki looked beautiful in her best flowered silk kimono. "As soon as we can afford it, I'll buy you a kimono," she promised Sadako. "A girl your age should have one." Sadako thanked her mother politely, but she didn't care about a kimono. She only cared about racing with the team in junior high. Amongst throngs of happy people, Sadako forgot her secret for a while. She let the bright joy of the season wash her worries away. At the end of the day, she raced Mashiro home and won easily. Above the door were the good luck symbols Mrs. Sasaki had put there to protect them during the new year. With a beginning like this, how could anything bad happen? Chapter 4 A Secret No Longer. For several weeks, it seemed that the prayers and good luck symbols had done their work well. Sadako felt strong and healthy as she ran longer and faster. But all that ended one crisp, cold winter day in February. Sadako was running in the schoolyard. Suddenly, everything seemed to whirl around her, and she sank to the ground. One of the teachers rushed over to help. I guess I'm just tired, Sadako said in a weak voice. When she tried to stand up, her legs went wobbly and she fell down again. The teacher sent Mitsuo home to tell Mr. Sasaki. He left his barber shop and took Sadako to the Red Cross hospital. As they entered the building, Sadako felt a pang of fear. Part of this hospital was especially for those with the atom bomb sickness. In a few minutes, Sadako was in an examining room where a nurse x-rayed her chest and took some of her blood. Dr. Numata tapped her back and asked a lot of questions. 3 other doctors came in to look at Sadako. One of them shook his head and gently stroked her hair. By now, the rest of Sadako's family was at the hospital. Her parents were in the doctor's office. Sadako could hear the murmur of their voices. Once her mother cried, "Leukemia? But that's impossible." At the sound of that frightening word, Sadako put her hands over her ears. She didn't want to hear anymore. Of course she didn't have leukemia. Why, the atom bomb hadn't even scratched her. Nurse Yasanga took Sadako to one of the hospital rooms and gave her a kind of cotton kimono to wear. Sadako had just climbed into bed when her family came in. Mrs. Sasaki put her arms around Sadako. "You must stay here for a little while," she said, trying to sound cheerful, "but I'll come every evening." "And we'll visit you after school," Mashiro promised. Mitsu and Iji nodded, their eyes wide and scared. "Do I really have the atom bomb disease?" Sadako asked her father. There was a troubled look in Mr. Sasaki's eyes, but he only said, "The doctors want to take some tests, that's all." He paused. Then he added, "They might keep you here for a few weeks." A few weeks? To Sadako, it sounded like years. She would miss graduation into junior high school, and even worse, she would not be part of the racing team. Sadako swallowed hard and tried not to cry. Mrs. Sasaki fussed over Sadako. She fluffed the pillows and smoothed the bedspread. Mr. Sasaki cleared his throat. Is there anything else you want?" he asked. Sadako shook her head. All she really wanted was to go home. But when? A cold lump of fear grew in her stomach. She had heard that many people who went into this hospital never came out. Later, Nurse Yasanga sent the others away so that Sadako could rest. When she was alone, Sadako buried her face in the pillow and cried for a long time. She had never before felt so lonely and miserable.